afternoon, good morning, and good evening, everybody. Welcome to this session that is about ambition through participation, citizens driven the process towards climate neutrality. My name is Adriana Valenzuela. I am currently the manager of the Youth Leadership Program at the Global Center on Adaptation in the Netherlands and former focal point for education at youth at the United Nations Climate Change Secretariat. I am delighted to welcome all our speakers and panelists who will be sharing today their experiences about how to empower citizens and mobilize transformations at local level towards climate neutrality. Just some housekeeping messages. This event will have a duration of 90 minutes, and the session will be recorded and later will be available on the Daring Cities website. We will have several options for all of you to engage. We will have polls, then please be just attend and that you can also engage. We will have also another alternative that is the box for questions and answers. During all the session, you can please send your comments, your questions, and we will be also taking notes, and later we will give the opportunity to our panelists to present and reply your questions. Also, at the end, we will have an ending session that will be open with the takeaways and comments. To start, all of us, we know that in 2015, governments adopted the Climate Change Paris Agreement, one of the most important multilateral agreements. The Paris Agreement highlights the importance of promoting collaboration about different levels of governance, but also the key role that cities and regional governments played, but also about the role of non-party stakeholders, including citizens. Governments alone will not be able to lead alone this transformation. And for that, today we have a panel sharing good practices and lessons learned from different cities. I am delighted to welcome two of our keynote speaker, and he is Dr. Andre Müller. Dr. Anders Müller is from the Federal Institute for Research on Building, Urban Affairs and Spatial Development within the Federal Office for Building and Regional Planning at the European Spatial and Urban Development Division. Dr. Müller is a principal investigator and senior advisor, and he has multiple experience working on research and policy advice. Then, Dr. Müller, I would like to invite you to share your slides and also to share with us your key messages, especially about the role of cities implementing international and national decisions, also cities as governance key players, civil society complementing local actions. Then, Dr. Müller, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you very much for your kind introduction, and your role you took over as moderator of this session. In fact, I had been asked by the city of Bonn to give you some insights about what we do on the federal level in Germany to better understand our cities and to support them to a certain extent in dealing with climate change and respective actions. So, as I'm not guiding the presentation as such, I will just say next slide so that you can forward it. Thank you very much. In fact, take the next slide. There are, for me, and you mentioned it already, some keywords, and that simply means that we're all part of a huge process or huge processes. And there are, for me, a couple of groups, but two are very important: cities and citizens. And in that respect, cities are, for me, the governance key players, as citizens are everyday life key players. And both, in fact, do and have to form a team in order to achieve these climate actions, which our states, and we are part of these states, had agreed upon. And particularly, we agreed upon to implement the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, in short, SDGs. So next slide. if you take this seriously, and this is what we found out in a couple of research projects, to really implement these international or national agreements, then for me, there are three key actions, in fact. The first one is that we have to optimize altogether the framework conditions for cities in order to do so. So it's a continuous communication across boxes, as we call them, or silos, and among cities so that they learn from each other. And ideally, you'll also link financial means to guiding subjects of these documents or of approaches on the local level. I'm working for a research institution. Please forgive me to stress that we also need a very clear link and partnership, in fact, between practice and theory. And we found out that it might be helpful to establish or embed in the work of a local authority and the stakeholder group so-called chief scientific advisors, because they are the ones then also linking to the scientific scene and different cultures. And we then, in fact, have to live together jointly these developed narratives on the local level. And making the teamwork work is, in fact, the most important thing. So everybody has to be integrated, and we have to find managing tools to act in an agile way in order to address specific situations and to act accordingly. And my understanding is that we also have to send team workers, for example, in a European context, to Erasmus field trips so that they really feel appreciated in their work, but also have at the same time the chance to further learn. Next slide, please. If you take these keywords and key actions, then you can, at least this is what we did from research projects, define some key circumstances. Sometimes you simply take note of an action from the international level. So this agreement is more a guidance note, or there are teaching modules. But also there are agreements which act as some kind of mirroring activities. So there are reference frameworks to which you can reference your work, tools, indicators, for example, for those who really would like to work a comparison, and standards. And a third group are guiding actions. So there are, in a European context, the Covenant of Mayors, which is very helpful in order to make things work, knowledge platforms, one-stop shops, and etc. And this is what I tried to mention when I said there has to be a close link between practice and theory. Sometimes you really need official partnerships based on contracts and agreements in order to make things work in the long run. Next slide. We had in our project a couple of cities we worked together with, and I will just shortly present to you cities both in Germany and Europe and in Asia. And I do know that we have one of our colleagues here from the United States of America in order to present one of his examples. So, of course, this is not an exhaustive list of cities, but it might give you an insight, in fact, that these international agreements, if the teamwork works, as I said before, can be implemented in cities of different sizes and different geographical locations. Just a first glimpse, as to say, on Germany. These cities are not ranked, they are grouped, in fact, by their inhabitants, and you see it in brackets. So you can easily trigger out that, in fact, it doesn't matter what kind of size a city has. It's about a city in the east, Finsterwalde, who is a rural community, and said we, in fact, can only implement these international agreements if we, as a city, with our needs, can mirror in. So we have to reflect on the needs of a rural community. Arnsberg in the west, again, a medium and small sized city, said, okay, we are part of the sustainability approach in any case, but we'll do it through small scale projects. And this is our strategy in order to mirror also the given circumstances of our city. Jena in the east is a city which clearly said, you know, we need self-driven local concepts. Otherwise, the implementation of international agreements will not work. And we will focus on the subject of mobility. Mannheim in the west again, a bigger city, is in fact one of the forerunners of implementing the new urban agenda and the SDGs, and they declare themselves by themselves to be an internationalizing city, as they said. Bonn, to have also the prominent link to the host of this meeting, has a coordination unit, climate protection coordination unit, and this initiative Bonn for Future. I think the colleagues could further elaborate on that in case they intend to do so. Leipzig in the east, a city also very much integrated in international context, but they very much linked their work to classical urban planning, because they said at the end, everybody needs a permission from the city. So the city as a governance institution is quite important in that respect. Stuttgart, again, in the West, is more dealing with strategic issues. And there, in fact, we do have or found a unit that is coordinating external relations. In that respect, it is some kind of international understanding. Hamburg, you might know the best in the north of the country, clearly says we are a city on the water and we have to take this into account. But of course, we do have existing bureaucracies or bureaucratic structures. In that respect, we have to make our existing units to work together and then, of course, integrate citizens as well. Next slide, please. The more European aspect, La Rochelle, a city in the west of France, which is a pioneering city, in fact, of a European tool called Reference Framework for Sustainable Cities, which says, I'm part of a European network and I want to implement this in any case. So I make myself become some kind of a forerunner in this process. Utrecht in the Netherlands, a city which said, we are part of a national campaign where a lot of some Dutch cities came together and we develop indicators by ourselves in order to compare us with others in the context of the Netherlands. Athens, the capital city of Greece, was part of a global network, amongst them C4 and the resilience network of Rockefeller Foundation, which in fact gave them the chance to elaborate a strategy called Athens Resilience Strategy. And Madrid, the capital of Spain, obviously detecting questions of inclusiveness in the city and thus using the global networks in order to build up this strategy. The last three examples are examples from Asia, just in order to now bridge it to a bit of a more international context. You might know that Hong Kong has been elaborating a strategy till the year 2030, again, by a planning department inside the special administrative zone or region, that acts as a spin in the web in order to strategically determine how the city and this zone, this region should develop. Seoul, the capital city of South Korea, clearly at the moment implementing its master plan with a target of 2030 and clearly together with its citizens in order to make clear that this can only work together with those living in the city. In Shanghai, interestingly enough, at the moment on a way to become a global city, which is it already, but being more embedded in the local context. So they talk about a West and East fan. And there in the city, a coordination unit is very active, the so-called councillor's office. Next and last slide. Just to present to you again some kind of takeaways or concluding notes, once again, non-exhaustive. According to our understanding in the research projects and in practice, what had been carried out with cities is that cities and citizens, again, should be a team at a satisfactory degree. So they should be happy in what they do, and they should be respected and be integrated the best way possible. So this coordination, which is needed for teamworks to work, should be carried out at its best, not 90%, but 100 or 120%. And again, what the situation also shows us is that for specific local projects, you need specific approaches. That might be a word which is well known, but I think it should be stressed that implementing the international agreements really tells you beforehand, look at what is there on stage and then try to build up your own approach. And last but not least, what I tried to elaborate with is given circumstances or key circumstances. Sometimes the international agreement, again, is just a document to take note of. In some cases, it mirrors. In other cases, it really guides. And last but not least, in some cases, it frames. So it is some kind of contract between a city and citizens in order to work. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope that that was input enough for the discussion, and I'm looking forward to this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mueller. It has been an excellent presentation showcasing how different cities around the world are leading the implementation of climate action. And you highlight the importance of partnerships, and I think it's one of the crucial points to accelerate climate action. But as well, will be very interesting to know from all the participants that are following this event, what approaches are you using at the local level to engage citizens, and what experience do you have? Thank you once again, Dr. Mueller. And with that, we would like to move to the first poll. Then our first poll will be to know from where are you joining this session. And you will see on the screen the poll, and then you will have different options. You can select if you are joining us from Germany, from the rest of Europe, from Africa, North America, the Middle East or South Asia, South America, Australia, or Oceania. And then now I invite you all to let us know from where are you joining this session. And I would like to see whether we have already some responses. I cannot see on the screen, but if in the studio, you can see the screen, and yes, you can share the responses from the participants from where they are joining the session today.
Adriana, happy to step in. This is Susanne from the ICLAY studio. We have a strong predominance for Germany and Europe, but we also can welcome participants from North America, Africa, and Asia. A percentage from like 70% European, but we're very happy to have them with you. No one from Australia or Oceania, but that is due to the time difference, and I hope they enjoy the recording. Thank you, Adriana.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot, Susan. And we also welcome all the participants that now are joined. We will continue this interesting event with the panel. And I am delighted to welcome two of our speakers. We have the experience of Bonn for Future as an example for civil society-driven participation. I am delighted to welcome Dr. Gesa Masbouchi. Dr. Gesa is a nutritionist with extensive professional experience in sustainability and nutrition education. She's working as a scientific editor at the Federal Center of Nutrition. Moreover, she's working as a facilitator, as a transition trainer for the administration. She's also an active member of the German and International Network of Transition Trainers. And Dr. Gesha co-founded the Transition Initiative in Bonn, in Balder, in 2011, and the Community-Supported Agriculture in Bonn, Solabo-V, in Bonn-Rhein-Sieg, in 2013. She's also a member of the executive board of Bonn in Bandel since 2013. She is a member of the Climate Advisory Board of the City of Bonn. And our second panelist will be Marion Weil. She's the coordinator, she's part of the coordination unit at the City of Bonn, working on climate change issues. Mario is a landscape ecologist and cultural manager. She's working as a campaign manager at the Climate Coordination Unit of the City of Bonn. And her focus is organizing campaigns, internal trainings, public networking events, as well as projects with focus on climate local action. Also, she is engaged in multiple civil society initiatives and established cooperation with multiple partners. Then, without any further introduction, I would like to welcome Dr. Gesha and also Mario to share with us your experience, especially in the city of Bonn. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Adriana, for the introduction. I would very much like to start with the current situation in Bonn so that you understand the background in which the Bonn for Future process is happening. And in order to do that, I would like to ask Julia to share the screen and start with a slide for the administrative background. So that you understand the work structure we are dealing with. I want to give you a brief overview on how climate action is implemented in our administration. And this, of course, is only an excerpt because I want to focus on those aspects that are important with regard to today's session topic, the Bonn for Future process. In order to coordinate activities on climate protection and climate adaptation, the city administration has set up its own coordination unit for climate protection in 2011 already. Currently, we are working there with 6 colleagues. And our task is the coordination of local climate protection and adaptation in the administration. We do not conduct investive climate projects ourselves because that is obviously done in the respective departments, but we coordinate them and we offer our expertise to our colleagues. And as Adriana said in the introductions, campaigning, public events and networking is one of our tasks as well. In our same department, there's also some staff that is involved with sustainability issues like fair trade activities, biological nutrition, environmental education, and others. So we have a rather broader view on the subject of climate protection and sustainability. And I would also like to mention the international perspective. Susanne is here with us today in the studio as well. She's with the Department of International Affairs and Global Sustainability, and they run projects with our global partner cities, for example, and they coordinate the international side of sustainability action in Bonn in the administration. So much for the climate action. And in addition to that, there's also a coordination unit for public participation in our administrations. And the colleagues there conduct lots of participation processes from a smaller to a larger scale. And to do so, we also have guidelines for public participation. And there's as well an online platform that brings together all our participation processes and that allows for a digital participation and for a dialogue with the public. That was just a glimpse on the work environment. Next slide, please, in which the Bonn for Future process will fit in. And secondly, I would like to give an overview about recent political decisions that are of importance for the Bonn for Future process. It was 1.5 years ago that the first Bonn sustainability agenda was adopted by our city council. It had been developed in a 2-year process together with stakeholders, with representatives from civil society, economy, science, and politics. And based on the holistic sustainability approach that is given by the Agenda 2030, this strategy includes 6 fields of action, climate and energy being one of them. But the networking and collaboration with civil society is an issue in this agenda as well. Like many other cities around the globe, Bonn has called out the climate emergency that was some 1.5 years ago, following a petition by local civil groups like Fridays for Future, Parents for Future, and others in Bonn. This proclamation of a climate emergency was a symbolic act and acknowledging that climate protection must have a top priority in our action. Following this, our administration has set up a catalog of measures as an answer to this climate emergency. It was developed by our staff members and then was adopted this May. And is, of course, for us a guideline for further action, but it's not all of it. There has to be more. Then in November, finally, the City Council adopted a resolution that the city should become climate neutral by 2035. And that is, of course, the most important background for the process now, because based on this resolution, Bonn and Wandel, together with other initiatives, handed in the proposal to realize a participation process in order to support this climate neutrality goal. And this proposal was discussed and recommended by the Committee for Public Participation, a committee from our City Council. And this was the starting point of the collaboration that we will talk about today. And with that, I would like to hand over to Gesa.
Yeah, thank you so much for the invitation and this wonderful workshop we have here with all the expertise. I'm glad to talk about our motivation to initiate Bonn for Future, and it's about illuminating the place from which we operate. So I guess everybody in the room and nearly everybody in the world knows about this picture, the world, global world. It's a picture which was taken at COP23 in Bonn 2017. And I would like to, now I would like to show you about 5 or 6 ingredients which makes us acting, and in this way we do it. So next slide, please. I think that lots of people don't know, at the streets don't know this picture. For us and for me in particular, it was revealing that our current system is not working in a good manner and that there's no choice anymore. We need to act, otherwise we will destroy our civilization. But this picture as well opens a new lots of new windows of opportunity, as we now we have to change and we can rethink and reinvent the way we live, we collaborate, and we organize society. Next picture, please. Another point of view is that the conventional approach of awareness raising and information did fail in the last 30, 40, 50 years. So you see here the expert who talks about planetary boundaries to a layperson. And this approach has failed since decades because behavior is embedded in social structures, in culture, in environments. And the effect is that we decided really to focus not on the individual, but on the social environment and the living environment. Next slide, please. So there's one basic assumption. It's about our picture of humankind. So we think that everybody wants to make sense and to belong, but for any reason, we are the best way to destroy the earth, although nobody wants it. So the base from which we operate is a positive picture of humankind. Okay, next slide, please. So the transition town approach, and we belong to the International Network of Transition Initiatives, is somehow summarized in this quote from Rob Hopkins. If we wait for the government, it will be too little and too late. If we act as an individual, it will be too little. If we act as a community, it might be just enough and just in time. This is a picture from Transition Greyton in South Africa, and I like it very much because you can see that transition looks very different at every place. So what did we do with this insights? Next slide, please. The key part of transformation to our perception and the key part of our work is really to work on a positive future. We do a lot of backcasting, visioning work, very participatory approaches. How can we reimagine our cities, our environments in a good way, in a better way that we have it now? And from this core vision, lots of projects developed in the first phase of our transition initiative. We were founded in 2011, and in the first phase, we really only worked with ourselves, the citizens. We did not connect to the city administration. We just started good projects. Next slide, please. So one very important ingredient is cooperation and the facilitation of cooperation. So my insight is that good cooperation is not falling down from the sky, but it can be facilitated. And there are loads of methods and great tools to enable collaboration. Here you can see members of the community supported agriculture. This is one project we started. And these members, there were two people who had the vision, we want to have sustainable food, more sustainable food, and we want to support farmers around Bonn. And now we have more than 250 households, and all these people pledge to give money for 1 year to enable a diverse organic farm with fair wages, and everybody pays as much as he or she is able to pay. So we completely changed the rules, how products are produced and how our products are shared. And if we can change the rules in this tiny community with some 200 people, households, now we try to make, to apply this approach as a citywide project. Next slide, please. So now we are in the stage that we really see the necessity to connect to the administration and really to connect the different levels of the society. We are very, very happy to have partners in the city administration like Marion is, who really acknowledge the worth of our work. And I would just like to draw your attention to this project. There is a European project which was initiated by the International Transition Network, and which is exploring how municipalities and citizens can work together. It's called Municipalities in Transition. We are not part of this because we just developed this project, but it's very interesting to go more deeper in this experiences. So I guess these are my 6 ingredients. I just check. Yes. So far, I'm ready now, and I think there's another question now for Marion. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Aguesa. It's a fantastic presentation about how do we foster and enable this transformation, and the points that you have highlighted about rethinking the way how we organize, also enabling this cooperation and also fostering the cooperation about the different levels of governance is extraordinary. Then now what we are going to do is, based on these presentations, we will have some time to have some questions and answers. Then I would like to know, for instance, as part of the process, what are the current developments and political decisions respect to climate change, is what you mentioned, Mario, but also if both of you could share some of these lessons learned about the process. And in the meantime, I would like to invite Suzanne in the studio, if we are also collecting questions from our participants and our audience, that also we will share later these questions. Then Dr. Aguesa and Marion, some of these lessons learned from you.
Well, it's probably a little bit early for lessons learned because we just started the process. There have been already some lessons out of the concept phase of creating this this process, and one of the experiences I already have made for myself is that that working together with civil society is a great win for us, I believe, because Bonn im Wandel has been very open and transparent in the communication with us from the very beginning, and they connected very early with numerous other civil society organizations to have a strong backup for their initiative and for their process. They also held public webinars also in the concept phase, presenting their idea and sharing it with the public. And I think that this is a very open and inclusive way of starting such a process, and that gave us trust as well. And I also have to say that our colleagues in the participation coordination unit, they do a lot of participation work, and they often have the problem to really reach out and to get into touch with the public and to see the people at the public participation events. So you can imagine that we were really thrilled to have the public coming to us in advance, even in the starting phase of such a process. That's really a great win, and we also hope that this will help in the further implementation, and that it will raise the credibility and or authenticity of the whole process.
Fantastic. And Dr. Chiesa, what was the motivation to initiate Bonn for Future? And what is Bonn for Future all about?
I wonder if we share the last 2 slides to give you a little impression about the design of the process. Could we do that? Wonderful. So looks a little bit dense, but there's a sense behind it. We started the conceptual phase last year in November, and the leading question was a positive question. So we asked people, we asked politicians, we asked initiatives, we asked enterprises, how could we facilitate a process towards climate neutrality, which enables you to say, I could not have spent my time in a better way. So we really collected lots of information. And you can see in the upper part, there are some green and yellow squares. So these are the different assemblies and also the council where we passed. And finally, we got a mandate, which is just which was in September 2nd. And for me, it was really impressing that nearly every party supported our concept and the idea of starting a broad process of participation. And what we do now is based on action learning. So you can see some red bubble in the middle. And we do continuously multi-stakeholder forums, climate forums. And after every forum, we stop, we think, we talk about with the entire team what we learned and what the next forum needs to implement or needs to tackle. And these forums are kind of the highlights of the entire process. Every half a year forum should take place. There's an evaluation in parallel. There is a digital SDG platform which shall somehow mirror the process, and also communication and education. And you see tiny little green bubbles, and we hope that not only we pass some good ideas to the city administration, but also the entire society is invited really to start climate action. And these are the green bubbles. We don't know yet, but we are sure it will work based on your experience.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. And Marion, another question for you is about what was the Bonn's motivation to take the leap of faith with the Bonn in Bundle?
Yes, as I already said, Bonn and Wandel was simply very convincing due to their effort, due to their expertise that they brought into the process, and I believe that it also helped that in our department we are. Well, outreach and networking with civil society is part of our daily work on a much smaller scale than in Bonn for Future, but it is. There have been and there are several activities that we conduct with the help or in cooperation with civil society. We have networking events. We have several small projects, for example, regarding local biological nutrition. There's a colleague, she works together with civil society organizations. So we have some experience and positive experience in working with civil society already and gathered this experience over the last years. And that it was a good experience, and not only in terms of the expertise of such organizations, but also regarding the reliability. So that gave us a good basis in trying to set up something even bigger, although it is an experiment, of course, for all of us.
Is I think, Marion, in general, for cities and even governments, is learning by doing and is building this process where especially many other cities will learn from your experience. Then, Dr. Gesa, I would like to know a bit more about what are the goals and the key milestones.
Mm. Yeah, so in fact, we have 4 goals. One goal is that everybody knows about climate neutrality and also knows how to engage. And the key milestones, I think the key milestones are the climate multi-stakeholder forums, where we invite also people from the citizens as well as stakeholders, and bring them together and really to envision a climate neutral city and to work on recommendations how to reach that all together. And so what the second very, very important goal is to create an atmosphere of trust and collaboration. For me, this is the most important thing. So, and the most important chance that we really can, support people to get hope, to work together, and to be proud of the process. And there's a third goal, which is creating acceptance. So we think that more insights and more discussions about the question how to reach these goals enhances understanding and acceptance of all these measures which are needed to become climate neutral. Yeah. Yes.
Very good.
Mm.
And now we'll have a final question for both of you, Marion and Dr. Gesa. How do the city and Bonn in Bundle work together in this process?
Yeah, that is a very good question, Adriana. I would like to say we'll see, because as I said, we are just starting, but we have built up some structures that I believe will be helpful. First of all, there will of course be a continuous communication between Bonn and Wandel and between us. We will have an employee for this project. There will be one person responsible only for this project, who will be the first contact person for Bonn and Wandel, and of course for the local public. And he or she will be responsible for the coordination then with the rest of the administration, and also towards politics, obviously. And one very important step in working together will be that we will reflect our work after every public forum. That firstly, we will disseminate the results, obviously, into the administration, into politics. But secondly, we will also reflect together with Bonn im Wandel, how did it go? Are we on the right way? And then adjust the process if we have to. So it's a never-ending learning circle, so to speak. And I think 2 other things are important as well. Maybe Julia, you could show this this process slide once more. And as Gesa already pointed out, there will be an advisory board that that goes with us along the way, and there will be an evaluation process as well. Maybe Gesa, you want to add to this?
Yeah, so there we got in touch with 2 universities here in the near area of Bonn, and of course we need evaluation, and we are keen to get an evaluation, and the advisory board is still to be implemented, but is kind of this process supporting committee. But what I also want to stress that there have been lots of participation events and with wonderful results, and after the events only little things happen. And what we try to kind of to do it different is, you can see this green arrows between the climate forum and the political process. So we really try to connect with the parties again after so the climate forums, and to talk to them, to ask them to maybe organize discussions about these results, to really try to connect the political process and the work of the administration with the participatory process. So this is the idea, and in 2 years we are very much more experienced to talk if this works. Thank you.
Fantastic. Then a special thanks to both of you, Marion and Dr. Gesa, and also congratulations for your leadership and taking this initiative forward. I am sure that in some years there will be many lessons learned that can inspire local lead action. And now I would like to check with the studio, with Suzanne, whether we have some questions already, or if we continue with our next speaker. Suzanne, do we have questions?
Adriana, yes, we do have questions. And if Julia can show me the questions pane quickly. There's one question I'd like to answer. Laurie is asking, how did Bonn's ambitious aim for carbon neutrality at 2035 instead of 2050 occur? That's an easy one, because we're climate active since the 19s, and after the climate neutrality, after the climate emergency decision, there was lots of debates on two strings. One strand was the continuation of things already in the pipeline, which means the adoption of the new Covenant of Mayors goals, of the guiding principle of climate, and there was a political request to the council to debate climate neutrality, and the result of this debate in the city council was 2035, and we're very proud of our council members. There are two other questions. Do citizens have a role in the climate forums, is a question by Aaron. What other kinds of platforms or dialogue does Bonn use to engage citizens and residents in the planning process for climate neutrality? Some have been answered, but perhaps Marion would like to add to that. Mm-hmm. There is an anonymous question to Bonn im Wandel asking for other examples of communities of engaging in city climate neutrality commitments in other cities where transition towns have been organized. And Sandra is asking for explanation of the climate forum. That's quite detailed. Perhaps, Gesa, you can combine that with the part of Aaron's question, how do citizens engage in the climate forum, and answer the two. And the transition towns question, and Marion could perhaps refer to the other platforms for engagements in the aftermath. Gesa, for you first. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for these questions. Yes, of course, there are other towns with transition initiatives which started similar processes. The first one was Totnes in Southwest England, which was kind of the tiny capital of the transition network. They started with a climate emergency what's next event, and engaged citizens in visioning and action plan. Same is true in Marburg in Germany, which is a smaller university town, and they combined already this Citizens Climate and Action Day with a climate forum on behalf of the mayor of Marburg, which was already quite innovative, and we developed this approach further. Of course, there are other initiatives very transition-like Green City Munich, and we are in good connection and to learn from each other. Yeah, maybe I would like to pass the question about how we pick the citizens for the climate forums to Marion, because this is the role of the city.
Yes, exactly. There is a how do you say, a random choice of citizens that can be done by the coordination unit for public participation. I cannot do it myself, but the colleagues there can and will invite a randomly chosen number of citizens to take part in these forums. And additionally, of course, there are already now interested people who already want to participate in those forums, and they are welcome too, of course. And regarding the question of the role in the climate forums, Gesa, would you like to answer that, or?
I'm still chewing on the first question. Yeah, so the role of the citizens in the climate forums, we thought about 100 randomly selected people, really randomly selected people, and also representative from the cultural area, from the politics, the enterprises, to really make a very diverse mix. But I would also like to stress that these forums is only one part of the process we would like to start. I personally think that real participation is only possible if you go into the neighborhoods. And that's why we, at the very end of the 2 years, we would like to start neighborhood processes, climate neutral neighborhoods. And co-creation for me is mainly to facilitate cooperation and understanding of the people who are already there, and listen and to ask the right questions, and to provide means, methods, finance, rooms to make this cooperation happen. So this is for me co-creation.
Fantastic. And with that, I would like now to invite you to cross the Atlantic and go and learn about the experience of another city. We are going to move forward, and I would like to invite our next speaker, that is Eric Chamber. Eric is the Director of Environmental Sustainability for the city of Wake in Wisconsin, and the city has 1.5 million inhabitants. He leads the Environmental Collaboration Office, and he was appointed by the Mayor Tom Barrett in June 2015. He has a very extensive experience, more than 18 years, working with the city, where he had been responsible to foster multiple projects, including, for instance, green infrastructure, also the plan for climate adaptation, the water-centric city initiative, and currently is building the largest solar energy project in the city. Then, without any further introduction, I would like to welcome Eric to share the experience of the city and this transformation towards climate neutrality. Eric, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Adriana. So yes, I'm delighted to be with you here and learn from my colleagues in Bonn about how to engage citizens. And I'd like to share what we're doing in Milwaukee, Wisconsin as well. So to give everybody an orientation of where we are in the middle of the country, located on the shores of Lake Michigan. So we view ourselves as a coastal city, and we are a city that there's a city of Milwaukee, there's a county of Milwaukee, and there's a Milwaukee region. The city itself has about 600,000 people. The region is closer to 1.5 million, as you said. And as cities, we are working in the United States to pick up the mantle and honor international agreements with regard to climate change. We know that the current leadership at the federal level has been sitting on the sidelines or worse on this. And so it's increasingly important for cities to, as a subnational government, to talk about the importance of climate change and engage our citizens on it. And that leadership starts with our mayor, Mayor Tom Barrett, who says, working together, we can make Milwaukee a world-class eco city on America's fresh coast. And so these are some scenes of Milwaukee. And, you can see that we are, really working hard to integrate environmental sustainability in everything we do, not just climate change. We talk about the triple bottom line, what I call the new triple bottom line: ecology, economy, and what I like to call ecommunity, which is the people that drive this concern for the environment. And the reason we use this is because we know that you can't have long-term sustained economic growth without caring about the environment. So, again, we have this vision. We try to do practical solutions that improve people's lives in the here and now while thinking about the long-term implications of that. And then we try to work with community and global partnerships because we are all in this together. With regard to climate action, I'll talk about our sustainability plan that was published in 2012 called Refresh Milwaukee. The energy programs that we have, green infrastructure, which is about climate adaptation and dealing with what we are most concerned about with climate change is extreme storms and flooding here in Milwaukee. And then how citizens rose up and helped create the city-county task force on climate and economic equity. We talked a little bit about the Paris Accords. The city has passed a resolution saying we are still in on the Paris Climate Accords, and most recently has passed a goal of cutting our carbon emissions 45% by the year 2030, and then carbon neutrality by 2050. So the Climate and Equity Task Force is really focused on those goals. I mentioned in 2012, the focus was on sustainability more broadly than climate change. That plan was called Refresh Milwaukee and touched on everything from buildings to energy to food systems, land, mobility, resources, recovery, and water. So many things overlap with climate planning, but it was, I think, viewed a little bit more broadly than just climate planning. And at that time, the citizens, I think, as a whole, hadn't really talked about the importance of climate change. And so we didn't necessarily want to get too far out ahead of the public themselves on that. But I think that's changed in the last couple of years, where citizens are loudly and clearly demanding climate action. And so we are working towards more explicit goals. We have a great roster of programs that deal with these issues. I'll talk about a few of these here. Milwaukee Shines is our solar program. And for a long time, we've been helping homeowners put solar on their own roofs through financing and bulk purchasing, doing workforce development to try to help connect local workers to the jobs of the future. We put solar on city buildings, but more recently, we've felt the need to really engage with our utility, We Energies, to try to green the grid at a much bigger scale. And context is important here because the city of Milwaukee does not, we don't have a municipal utility. The utilities are not directly accountable to the citizens. And so we've had to be creative in how we engage the utility to try to get them to move towards renewable energy. And we've been successful in doing that. We're now constructing a large solar project on a city-owned landfill, so reusing the land for renewable energy. Quickly on our green infrastructure plan, this was another separate citizen-driven process where we are recognizing that we have too much pavement, that we need to add green space to manage stormwater and flooding. So it touches on everything from green streets, green development, requirements for green infrastructure in our development, reducing the size of parking lots and adding green space. And the most exciting thing, I think, is transforming our schools to include green infrastructure. So we've done a lot in the city in the last 10, 15 years, but the citizens want more. I mean, I think the citizens are demanding climate action at a much greater scale than what we've done. And you can see here that, the protests, the marches that have been going on around the world are happening here in Milwaukee. And you can see Mayor Barrett there engaging with the residents. And in 2019, the citizens came together and asked to create a joint city-county task force on climate and economic equity. And so both the city of Milwaukee and the county of Milwaukee have passed this resolution, and we are working together. There are citizen stakeholders on the task force itself. And then we have working groups that are open more broadly to the public and stakeholders that want to be involved in putting recommendations together. when we listen to the community, I think one of the things that has come up from the ground up is this notion of economic equity and equality and dealing with racial disparities. This community is saying, yes, we want green jobs. Yes, we want to deal with climate change. And as we do that, we need to be more intentional about opening up green jobs of the future to people of color and people who live in the city to help, deal with the immediate needs that people have to put food on the table and pay the bills. And so this discussion of equity has really become to inform our work, not only in Milwaukee, but in cities across the country. And we have to kind of harness that energy and that movement around social justice and build that into our climate action planning efforts. So we have this citizens, body that is working on these issues. I am a member of the task force, as well as elected officials from the city and the county of Milwaukee. And again, the citizens, I think, really bring an important voice. And I liked what Dr. Mueller had to say at the beginning about respect. I think that's a really important word in building trust between the folks who are in the city government and the citizens, and having that dialogue about not only what the goals are and what needs to be done, but how to go about doing it and where to attack different issues in terms of where change can happen. So how do we channel this energy that the citizens have and turn that into policy action? And where does additional engagement have to happen? Because climate change is a complicated issue. It's different levels of government control, different policies that influence what our overall carbon emissions are. And so we have to not only engage at the city level, but we have to engage with our utility, we have to engage at the state level, and we have to engage at the federal level too, and push policies at all of those areas. And so it's really been a good dialogue that we've developed here. I'll say that we have this good combination of not only citizen engagement and what they're saying on the ground level, but also bringing in experts and having that dialogue. And ICLEI USA has been very helpful in that process. They've helped us put together a greenhouse gas inventory, for example, and they are helping us put together various scenarios of policy options that might help drive the greenhouse gases down to what we need to get to hit our goals. And I think this is an important piece because it's important to hear people where they're at, but it's also, I think, to have a successful public process, the experts still need to be at the table, and they still need to say what kind of activities are going to really drive down the number of carbon emissions to the scale that we need to save the planet. And we have to have this ongoing dialogue between experts and the community, and then the political experts who know, again, what policies are achievable and how to change those policies. So this dialogue is very important. And then we need dedicated staff within local government to implement the plan, to carry out the actions, to make sure that the ideas that are generated by citizens are embedded in our budgetary processes, that initiatives get funded the way they need to get funded, and that the climate plan does not just stand alone, but that it's integrated into other planning efforts that the city might be doing. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done, but we're really excited about this. And you can read about our process at milwaukee.gov/climate plan. In March, the citizens and the advisory group issued a preliminary report that kind of outlined the landscape of the city and what is needed for these goals, as well as many of the challenges. But then they said we need a formal climate and equity plan. So we got to this point of having after about a year of public engagement, we got the preliminary report, but we recognize that it's going to take another year or two to get a formal climate action and equity plan, and that we need to bring more stakeholders to the table. It can't just be the activists on climate change, but it needs to be stakeholders from our utility, from the manufacturing community, from the building owners and those sorts of things. So it has to be a broad engagement beyond just people who think about climate change when they wake up in the morning. It has to be something that's going to be acceptable for everybody in order to have that broad scale change that we all want and not get a political backlash later. So we're excited about that. Again, ICLEI helped us with the greenhouse gas inventory and some modeling work. And we hope that this combination, this ongoing dialogue between citizens and the public and professionals will pay off. So we have working groups, smaller working groups that are coming up with preliminary ideas. These are citizen stakeholders. And then there'll be a second phase that is more broad public participation, where the general public can react a little bit more to, what we've put together as the plan starts to take shape. So it'll be an iterative process, and again, but citizens need to be involved in every step of the way, and we're excited to see where this turns out. But I'll just leave you with the notion that Milwaukee stands with you, with our friends across the Atlantic and around the world, on climate action, and we look forward to continuing this dialogue and making change together.
Thank you very much, Eric, for sharing with us what are you doing in your city and how this transformation is engaging citizens. And I would like to know a bit more about some of the key accomplishments with this process, and also some of the lessons learned in these several years of implementing climate action at local level.
Yeah, so we've really had to try to figure out, well, what can you do at the local level, given that we don't control the utility directly, as I said. So some of the things that we identified and have really been active on over the years has been about financing renewable energy and energy efficiency. That was really a value add that local government could bring, that many people, that the energy efficiency, renewable energy can pay for itself in the long term, but oftentimes people don't have the resources up front to pay for that. And so how can we help provide loans and other financing for people to do the right thing? We've been very, very successful with programs for homeowners, for businesses, to do renewable energy and energy efficiency, which is often forgotten. So I think that's an important lesson. Creating green jobs directly for people is important. So thinking about, okay, if we're going to do renewable energy projects and energy efficiency projects, how do we connect the people that need jobs the most to these job opportunities? And that's hard work. I mean, there's a lot of workforce development that has to happen to identify what green jobs are, how to get the training, how to then connect them with employers. And I think that is, it's a challenge, but it's something that has to continue to happen. I mean, if I've done public engagement for many years now, and time again, what people want is jobs and employment. I mean, that's the struggle in the global economy, is to give people a living wage and those sorts of things. So that's the challenge. How do we connect this long-term strategy to immediate economic success for homeowners and workers in the here and now? So that's what we're hearing, and that's what we're going to continue to press for.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Eric, for these reflections. And we can see that we have now two cities sharing the experience with a common goal: how to accelerate implementation of the international agreements as the Paris Agreement on Climate Change and the Sustainable Development Goals at the local level. And it's a long-term transformation that requires immediate action. And with that, I would like to invite all our participants to continue with our poll. And this will be, I would like to also kindly request the support from our studio to pull the poll. And this poll will be about what topics would you wish for the next half an hour. And we have a couple of options. One is mobilizing a broader public stimulated engagement, keeping a sustainable momentum of a specific process. Also a framework condition of civil society engagement, funding, and structures of engagement. Then, Julia, if you could please put the poll, and now I would like to invite everyone to participate in this poll. And Susan, now that you are in the studio, do we have some responses already?
We do, and there is a strong preference on mobilizing a broader public and stimulating engagement, followed by framework conditions of civil society engagement, structures of engagement, funding, and keeping a sustainable momentum of a specific process. I think we can all agree that mobilization is one of our core goals here, and that comes out of the poll. Thank you.
Excellent. Then now is a time to really say thank you to all our speakers who have shared this vision and lessons learned. And then we are going to move to the question and answer questions. Then, as I mentioned at the beginning, there is a box that you can include your questions. And I would like to also invite Suzanne in the studio to read some of the questions, and there could be questions directly addressed to one of our speakers, or also other questions that could be replied for any person of the panel. And now I would like to give the floor to you, Suzanne.
Thank you, Adriana. Actually, there are two questions, both addressing Eric, but both of interest for all the panelists. The first one is about strategies and methods used to assess and communicate campaigns and programs with the citizens. Did you use social media, forums, and surveys? And I think it would be interesting to hear that from Marion as well. The second question is on eventual setbacks because of the administration's resistance to act on climate change or climate denial. So shortages of third-party funding or national funding. Also, the question is asking for next steps in 2021 and beyond. And that's the question I would like to redirect to all of you. How did you engage the business community? So let's start with the assess strategies and methods, and then switch to the funding and engagement question. Eric, the floor is yours.
Sure. So we've got a really good relationship with our business community. And when you say the business community, there are different facets of that. There are manufacturing companies, there are commercial building owners, and we've engaged with them in different ways. One of the groups that we worked with on the business community is called the Midwest Energy Research Consortium, which is focused on a lot of different businesses in Milwaukee that do energy efficiency and other forms of energy power and controls industry, for example. And I've been a stakeholder with them for many years. And when they started, they talked about all energy sources. And every time I'm there, we're talking about, yes, but we need to focus on climate change and transitioning our energy sources to renewables. And so I think that change is starting to happen now, where the industries in Wisconsin, more of them are understanding that this is important, and they do market analyses, and they look around the world and they say, well, my gosh, look at these business opportunities for distributed energy and things like that in California or Europe. And then they start to ask, well, why aren't those things happening more in Wisconsin, in our state? And so we can talk about, well, because they have policies that promote these things. And so I think that's been an eye opener from the business community about, if we build the controls that cut energy use, policy support for that can help support businesses as well. So that's part of it. On the business side, we have what we call our Better Buildings Challenge, where we challenge building owners to cut their energy use by 20% over a decade. And then when they do, we celebrate them through events and awards and things like that, so they can see that there's a positive business case for this. And I think when it comes to the climate plan, we're going to carry that forward. With regard to the specific ways of getting the word out, I mean, it's all of the above strategy with regard to social media and being on different social media platforms, talking about this event, getting in front of the public and not only talking to them, but listening to them in different forums and things of that nature, putting out newsletters and talking about climate change, again, not only as doom and gloom, but the business opportunities and the opportunities for a healthier, more sustainable, and more prosperous community.
Thank you, Eric. Marion, on campaigning, you could add, because I remember your interesting climate campaign, Klima einfach machen, which means our climate action, just do it. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, of course, we also use different channels in communicating what we are doing in spreading our campaign. The campaign you just mentioned is thought to present real Bonn people that are already engaged with some sort of climate action, and we presented that campaign all over the city on billboards, I think you call it, and website, social media, of course, as well. But we also use the opportunity in public events, for example, in cooperation with the Volkshochschule, I believe is called Center for Adult Education. They are a very good partner in communicating sustainability issues, not only climate action. We partner up also with other event organizers in the city. For example, we were and are present at the yearly museums festival, so that we can also get in touch with not only those already engaged, but also reach out to those, for example, interested in a cultural event, and meet them there and get to know them, and hand out our information and get into a dialogue with them. So there are several channels, I believe, that can and should be used. Plus, we also have maybe you have something the same in Milwaukee. We have an energy agency here in Bonn that belongs to the city, and that does a very valuable work in consulting homeowners on building and renewable energy. And they have a personal consulting offer, but also have public events where they inform about their action, for example.
And last not least, we also have a sustainability coordinator in the administration who's organizing a series which is called SDG Days every year. Well, obviously, this year it didn't happen in real life, but just virtually part of it. But all this together is reaching out to people where they are. We have another question, two questions even. One question to Eric, who mentioned landfills used as a foundation for solar panels. The question is asking for some details by Laurie, and Sandra again. She's asking for a shift in behavior and attitude visible in the citizenship, in the general public, an emerging urge to act on climate at the local level since March, in the aftermath of the COVID-19 outbreak. That's an interesting one. Perhaps, Eric, you could start with the solar panels and then comment on COVID and climate action.
Sure. So as I mentioned, we have a private utility in our area that we don't have direct control over. However, myself and sustainability directors from other units of local government, we were having lunch one day, and we said, we're doing energy efficiency in our buildings, but how can we work together to have a bigger action, or to have a bigger impact? And so we worked with the respective leaders, our Mayor Barrett, for example, and we wrote a letter to the utility, and we said, look, if you add up all the energy these big government institutions use, we are large customers, and we want renewable energy. How can you help us transition to that? How can we, as buyers, institutional buyers of power, get renewable energy? And to our surprise, they created 2 new programs that were approved at the state level, and one allowed them to lease rooftops or land from large customers to build solar, and we would get the renewable energy credit, so we would get the financing. And so we had to look around to find where could we build, how can we max out this program and get what we can out of it. And so we looked at a number of sites, and we settled on this landfill near our airport. And it turned out to be a great spot because it's land that couldn't otherwise really be developed for much. It was a secure site next to the airport with fencing, and the neighbors are the airport and the Air National Guard. And so it worked out really well that we were able to lease this land to the utility. So we're getting revenue from the project. The utility owns and maintains the system. And then that money that came in from the revenues, we are then reinvesting in our climate action planning effort. So now we have some resources to do the planning and move forward. And so it's a great project. And then we're going to continue to talk to the utility, as well as our state regulators to figure out other methods that we can try to get, the city can procure larger and larger amounts of renewable energy to meet our climate goals. I think it's important to engage at the building level and at the individual level, but to hit these big goals, we have to engage at this utility scale level to make a difference.
Thank you for this answer, Eric. Perhaps Andre, you would like to comment in the change of the landscape after the COVID-19 outbreak, or also on the business engagement in the initiatives you have knowledge of.
Yeah, thank you very much. I would in fact not touch the COVID-19 issue because we all know that it is there and there are so many different approaches to handle it. So it would be very difficult, but I'm pleased to see that now the discussion turns into don't forget climate change and sustainability, and at the same time try to find a solution to handle COVID-19. But I think one aspect I could in fact talk about a bit is how to integrate the business sector, and that brings me back to also what Eric Schomburger mentioned, and what in fact initially I said is this respect, and I think if we take the teamwork as such, which we need seriously, then it's about the triple E, it's about the triple C, sorry, it's about all kind of corporations, including the business sector, definitely to get this work done. And in that respect, coordination is quite substantial and crucial. And this coordination, in fact, has to work in an agile way, or you ever may call it, in the way of also to address business issues. By chance, in fact, it happens that I'm also doing a lot of research on funding programs, particularly public funding programs, that clearly shows us that the business sector is in fact using them in order to get at least the first step done. And then at the end, if this partnership is a real partnership, it works for both and different sizes. But it brings us also to a point, and that was also mentioned by Eric Schomburger, is the question of the city budget, or how to link it to decisions of the city council. And I think that, is another point to make clear that, I mean, we're dealing with public money, right? And we're all taxpayers, so we want also to see this money be used in its best way possible, but also to streamline budgets. And sorry for opening this way, but if you take a look at one of our European countries, Finland, you clearly see that, in fact, they are on their way to evaluate all their national and local budgets against sustainability criteria, clearly saying this is sustainable, this is not sustainable, or it also supports to a certain extent the notion of resilience, and that brings us back to COVID-19 in order to react on specific events. And that might also be economic events when, for example, an employer leaves a given entity. Thank you.
Thank you, Andre. That was an interesting insight. Actually, Bonn is working towards the sustainability budgeting as well, just as a detail on the side. And I'm handing back over to Adriana for a final round of statements and questions to the panelists.
Thanks a lot, Suzanne. And now we will have the opportunity to hear about each one of our speakers, maybe some final ideas and reflections. And I would like to hear from you, what will be your advice to other local governments and civil society initiatives, also to engage a broader public and to keep a momentum going after a specific process? And also, I would like to know from you, what will you ideally have accomplished by 2030? And I would like to give the floor to all our panelists. And then I would like to invite first our first speaker, Dr. Andre Mueller, to share your perspective. Dr. Müller, please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you again. Of course, my vision is that by 2030, and this is the numbering of all these documents, that we manage at the end really to be sustainable. But we all know that this is a very long way, though just a couple of years are left. But I think my takeaway would also be to take this climate actions and how to integrate most stakeholders and groups in that way, that we take really the situation as a living lab. And the living lab clearly means that we are with respect or partnership trying to implement this together. And that means, once again, cities are governance key players because they are the ones, I would say, organizing the way we live together in more formal terms. And of course, on the other side, and this is really on equal footing, there are citizens, and citizens do form the second part of this group in a way of, also trying to test more informal approaches. But once again, it should be a team that works together on the issue. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Then Dr. Gesa.
Well, thank you. Good question. So I'm convinced that we need this multi-level approach, and that we need governments who really care and enable environments who really help us to live sustainable. And I also would love to see that citizens are not the targets that have to be engaged, but that citizens are co-creators, and the room is opened for co-creation in a partnership, and not just a target for a message. This would be my hope. And my hope as well would be that Bonn for Future really gets big and good. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Gesa. And now Mario.
Hope would be that sustainability, a sustainable everyday life will be internalized somehow in our mindsets by 2035, so that it goes without saying. That would be very nice, of course. And I think a good advice can be to, when it comes to collaborating with civil society, to really be open for change, and to be open for new perspectives, or for different approaches, because municipality administration has a certain way of working with its hierarchies and its responsibilities and a very strict environment, and civil society works in another way, and neither of one is good or bad. And I would wish that there is an openness and an acceptance of each other's strengths and approaches, because that would really help to broaden your own perspective and to work together.
Thanks a lot, Marion. And now over to you, Eric.
Sure. Two words come to mind, and they are gratitude and hope. So first of all, I am grateful to the citizens who are volunteering and taking their time to engage on these issues. Sometimes in government, there's a temptation to, sometimes it's tough when people are demanding that you do more and more and more. And you're saying, I'm doing a lot, but people are demanding that. But to view that with gratitude, that there is a constituency of people that want to see change, and ultimately are absolutely necessary to make change possible. It makes my job easier. It makes all of our jobs easier when we have lots of citizens making climate change an issue and talking about it and encouraging their elected officials to take action and being involved. So I'm very grateful for the work that they've done. The other piece of this has got to be hope. 2020 has been a very difficult year with COVID. Young people are experiencing a lot of anxiety, not only about that, but our political leaders and about climate change itself. Young people have been brought up to seeing this, really dramatic problem coming, and it's tough, and we need action, but we also need to realize that, approach it with a hopeful angle, that we can deal with this. we can create jobs and we can create a better planet for all of us.
Thanks a lot, Eric. And now it will be the opportunity for all our participants also to share your takes away. Then now I would like to invite you to use the chat to share with us your goals, also your vision for 2035 and your takeaways. And I would like to invite Suzanne also to kindly share some of the comments on the chat about the takeaways. Suzanne, the floor is yours.
Well, actually, everybody seems to be busy typing yet. And I don't know whether it's possible to do a poll at the same time. We have prepared a little poll. So Julia, please launch that poll while we're waiting for comments. We would like to know if this session is likely to inspire your future work. If your institution or organization or you personally would like to replicate one of the examples presented in terms of stimulating and engaging with civil society engagement, perhaps are the lessons learned helpful in your planning for an initiative or in a city hall? Perhaps you don't know, or perhaps you're rather not inclined. Please type your answers. And we see a strong yes in terms of stimulating and engaging with civil society engagement. That seems to be the core takeaway from here. And actually, these examples have been so inspiring. First, we did a trip around the world with Andre. We had Bonn for Future explained in detail and exciting times ahead for the citizens of Bonn and the City Hall. And we had Eric with his really impressive programs in Milwaukee, over in Wisconsin, USA. No, and it's solid, it's civil society engagement on top. Lessons learned are very helpful, and replication is also at 20%. So thank you for giving us your opinions. And I think I hand back to Adriana now, because we have expressions of gratitude in the chat and appreciation. And I think Adriana will word that for us now to conclude the session.
Thank you very much, Suzanne. And I would like to thank all our speakers, Dr. Müller, Dr. Gesa, Marion, and also Eric, for sharing your experience, but also providing this inspiration, because we need to accelerate action, and action at local level is one of the key elements. Also, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to our host, Bonn for Future, and the city of Bonn, and of course, ICLEI and all the persons that have made this session possible, including Susanne Older from the city of Bonn, the international office. And also, I would like to invite all of you to continue engaging in all the discussions and events that the Dairy cities are planning. Then thank you very much to all of you. And now the idea is to continue working to generate transformation and to make possible climate neutrality for all our cities. Thank you very much to all of you.